Imagine waking up naturally in the morning. No alarm, no schedule, no job waiting for you. After stretching in bed, you stop and think, what should I do today? You're not the first person to experience this because for nearly 300,000 years, every human lived this way. Their daily lives were completely different from ours. Today, the average person spends around 90,000 hours working during their lifetime. That's a huge part of life spent doing a job. But for most of human existence, jobs didn't exist. There were no offices, no salaries, no bosses, no career goals. So what did humans actually do every day? We have some good clues. In 1963, archaeologist Richard Lee did a study that changed the way we see prehistoric life. He spent time watching the daily lives of the Ju-Huansi people in Botswana, one of the last groups still living in a lifestyle similar to humans before farming began. Adults only spent around 15 to 20 hours per week finding food. That's about 2 or 3 days of work each week. The rest of the time was free, and this wasn't unique. Anthropologists found similar results in many places around the world. The Hadza people in Tanzania, the H in Paraguay, and the Martu people in Australia all showed the same pattern. Humans in these societies spent far less time working than modern people do today. Some people might say, but those are modern tribes. How do we know ancient humans lived like that too? The answer is simple. They're skeletons. When scientists compare hunter-gatherer skeletons to early farming populations, the difference is clear. Early farmers were shorter and less healthy. Their bones show signs of hard, repetitive labor. Their teeth were damaged from grain-heavy diets. Many had arthritis and died younger, but hunter-gatherer skeletons looked healthier. They were taller, stronger, and had fewer signs of physical stress. Their bodies tell an important story. They were not working non-stop to survive. But maybe the strongest evidence comes from something unexpected: art. In 1994, explorers found Chauvet Cave in France. Inside were beautiful paintings created around 30,000 years ago. Animals covered the cave walls: lions, horses, rhinoceroses. The drawings had detail, movement, and shading. These weren't quick sketches. Someone spent many hours deep inside a dark cave creating them by firelight. Not for food, not for survival, just because humans wanted to create something beautiful. In South Africa, archaeologists found tiny shell beads that are around 100,000 years old. Small holes were carefully drilled into them so they could be worn as jewelry. The shells came from a coastline 12 miles away. Someone walked all that distance just to collect shells and decorate themselves. In Germany, researchers discovered a 40,000-year-old flute made from a bird bone. It had perfectly shaped finger holes. Someone took the time to create music, not for hunting, not for protection, for enjoyment. And these discoveries are everywhere. Across Europe, Africa, and Asia, archaeological sites from over 100,000 years ago contain many decorative objects, detailed tools made with extra care, and items that took hours to create, even though they were not needed for immediate survival. This is what people did when they weren't securing food. They created, they decorated, they made things beautiful. So what did a normal day probably look like? You wake up near sunrise. The fire from the night before is still burning a little. Someone throws more wood onto it. You eat leftover meat or fish from yesterday, maybe with some nuts or berries gathered earlier. Breakfast is a social moment. People sit and talk. They casually decide what to do that day, not because they need a strict plan, but because humans naturally do that. Later in the morning, some people might go hunting or gathering. But here's the important part. It wasn't actually every day. If the hunts from previous days had gone well and there was still enough food left in the camp, everyone would stay at the camp. They repaired tools, made baskets, prepared animal hides, sharpened spears. These were not like modern jobs because there was no manager watching them or a fixed schedule they had to follow. People worked because skills mattered. Being useful and capable earned respect from others, and hunting itself was very different from what movies show. Humans are endurance hunters. Instead of chasing animals quickly, they slowly tracked them for hours until the animals became exhausted. Humans are especially good at this because we sweat and control our body temperature while running. The hunt could last around 3 to 6 hours, including the time spent traveling. After that, the animal was brought back to camp and prepared for food. Everyone ate together, and by early afternoon, the main work of the day was basically finished. Then came something modern people rarely experience: free time. People rested in the shade. They talked for hours, played with children, made jewelry, carved patterns into bones and stones, took naps. Anthropologist James Sussman wrote that among the Ju-Huansi people, adults spend about 6 hours each day in what he called social time. Not working, not sleeping, just spending time with other people, talking, laughing, and joking together. Because relationships were everything. In a world without money or laws, survival depended on community. If people liked and trusted you, they shared food with you when times were hard. So humans invested huge amounts of time into friendships, humor, and connection. Then night arrived, and this may have been the most important part of the day. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner studied conversations among the Ju-Huansi people during daytime. Conversations were practical. Where were the animals? Which plants Plants were ready to collect. Who was being unfair? But at night around the fire, conversations changed completely. People told stories about spirits, ancestors, funny moments, dreams, adventures, the beginning of the world. Wiesner believed this is where human culture truly grew. Humans finally had enough safety and free time to think about ideas beyond survival. And sleep itself was different too. Before electric lights existed, many humans slept in two separate parts. First sleep for about 4 hours, then a quiet waking period in the middle of the night, then a second sleep until morning. So a full day for ancient humans may have looked something like this. A few hours finding food or making tools, many hours socializing and relaxing, time for art, music, storytelling, and creativity. Two separate periods of sleep, long moments of simply existing without pressure. Then, about 10,000 years ago, something changed. Humans began farming. At first, farming seemed helpful. It created more food, but more food meant larger populations. Larger populations needed even more food. Very quickly, humans became trapped inside the farming system, and farming required hard, constant labor. Planting, harvesting, protecting crops, storing food. People worked longer and harder than hunter-gatherers ever did. But populations continued growing, and society became more complex. Soon there were craftsmen, soldiers, priests, rulers, and eventually full-time jobs. Human time slowly stopped belonging to individuals and started belonging to systems. Cities grew, schedules appeared, work became a central part of life. The original human lifestyle slowly disappeared. Today, people spend most of their lives working. Many feel guilty when they rest. Many feel pressure to constantly be productive. But ancient humans lived differently. They made art because they had time. They spent hours talking because relationships mattered. They rested without feeling lazy. They didn't need to prove their value every day. They were already enough. Modern humans often spend decades working just to one day experience peace, freedom, and rest during retirement. But for most of human history, that peaceful life was simply normal life. We are still the same species, but the way we live today is completely different from the way humans lived for almost all of our existence. We traded freedom for security, free time for productivity, and simple living for endless work.